Hello and welcome to the channel. Now in the video I would like to present to you today, our chief concern will be the architecture of a watch's crown, bow, and pendant. Now this is the top portion of a pocket watch, later a wristwatch, and the stylistics and design of this is extremely helpful often in determining the age of a pocket watch. Now, certain styles will be predominant and will continue. There will be certain styles that we will find that are quite popular. They become almost archetypal, and we'll see them repeating later. So that in certain cases, these can be rather difficult to determine. If it is a very popular style, it is repeated over the decades, and so, but nevertheless, we do have these general characteristics that will hone in on a particular style. And so I just wanted to present this. This is our concern today, and I hope this will help you in dating your pocket watches. Now, let us begin with, and we will be discussing stylistics from the last quarter of the 18th century, so the 1770s, 80s, 90s, until the early 20th century, until roughly 1930. So let us begin. Now, the first pocket watch crown and pendant and bow I would like to show you is, we do have these date from the 1780s, and this is a style which we see in this period, and this is a very slim, high neck. And now this watch, we have this example of a gold watch by David Francois Montandon, and he was in Paris and working with a Jonas Louis Yersin. So we do find that this is a stylistic that we find in this period, and we do see him in another watch with within the same period. It's 1780s. This is a silver quantième pocket watch, but you will note this stylistic. Now, this would be a design that we will see regenerating later in the 19th century. However, watches with this type of structure we do find in this last quarter of the 18th century. So this is something that we can use to date. Now, clearly, these periods are not, these are sort of bleeding into other styles, and we'll see this in the early 1800s yet. After this, we do start to see new stylistics. Now, when we are moving forward, we do have we can see in a watch by Henri Louis Montandon of Copenhagen, we do have a watch date of 1825. The watch is dated. We do see this on the watch, the date of 1825, and we do have a very similar architecture. We see this high pendant and still rather thin. We see that the bow is also more or less in the same configuration, and basically the crown, we can see that there is some evolution in the crown. So we are still in this sort of general configuration of architecture. Now, this will begin to change, and we do have other watches by this same maker. Now, these are watches that are starting to get this more, the pendant itself almost disappears into this spherical ball. We see this other watch by Henri Louis of Copenhagen with this, the bow becomes quite circular, like exactly like a circle, and it intersects with the crown, which is essentially this ball. And this will be a popular design, which we will see especially during the middle of the 19th century. But let us continue. We have a very similar 1820s to 1830s dated pocket watch. This is Les Frères Montandon, signed La Chaux de Fonds. And this is the very beginnings of the Montandon brothers. And we do find this Adam and Eve watch in this particular object, this same stylistic. But now in the 1830s, we do find more of an attempt at this engraving on the pendant and the crown, which is a very Baroque, a very highly ornamented, ornate engravings on this architecture. And we do see in this David Henry Montandon example, we do see this ornate engraving in there. So this is noticeable, and it is helping us to determine the age. Now, in the case of a Charles Montandon and Girard piece, we do have this ornate architecture, and we do see that this the pendant, the bow, the crown, they are following this already starting to be an established pattern, and but we have the addition of these engravings, this very Baroque, what should one call it, champlevé, but this engraving more. So this is indicative of these 1830 period watches. Now, moving along, we do have a very fine example of 1840s. This is circa 1845, 1850, no later than. But we do have the pendant is very much thicker, and the bow itself is not a perfect circle. It is almost oval, but it does reach up. And this is a very interesting silver watch from signed Louis Montandon, Geneva. And so this is this mid 1840s to no later than 1850 period. And this is very helpful in ascertaining more or less which decade this is falling in. So we do have this. Now, as we move into the 1860s, there's a very interesting, we see this general stylistic. This is the one that we did see beginning in the 1820s, but this is something that would go on up until almost 1880. And this is this very simple, basically sphere, which the pendant has become this essentially a ball, and the bow comes through it. But we have this in this 1860 patent by Henri Louis Montandon of Besançon, and this was patented in 1860, and this is right from the patent. So we do see that this, and we have this locked date, but yet this is a very general archetypal design, which continues to be popular. Now, by the mid 1860s until about 1870, we have a very similar design. However, on top, we do see that on top of the crown itself, there is almost a lever-looking addition. So this is almost like a cap, but this is indicative of this 1865-1870 period, and this cap would continue through the 1870s until early 1880s. We're still seeing it, but this is very early 1880s. But this is a stylistic that we will see predominantly starting from this period, 1865-ish, through the 1870s. Now, during the 1870s, we have some significant evolution within the crown itself. And there is a very good example that, and I should mention that this cap that we find in the 1870s, that we're seeing this in Ulysse Montandon of Saint-Croix and his partnership with Samuel Jacquard. We see it in their watches. and their partnerships are dating from this 1870 period, so I did want to back up and state that. Also, we see this in Louis Montandon Locle signed pieces. And but now we have arrived to the 1870s, in approximately the mid to late 1870s, and the pendant is very, it has crystallized into less of a round shape, but we have this sort of almost contained capsule, and above it, the crown itself, which is in the shape of a pumpkin, and indeed this is referred to as a pumpkin shape, and so this is very indicative of this mid-1875, prior to 1880s. However, and this, we do see this in a Eugène Montandon Locle piece, as pictured here. Now, by the time we have the 1880s, and we're this pumpkin is continuing its evolution, and it is already much more spherical, and it is essentially an onion. This is referred to, this style, as an onion, but this is 1880s, very predominant 1880s stylistic, and as we see in this golden Jules Montandon Locle complicated watch, we have this onion crown. This onion crown will continue through the 1880s. We see another one on a silver telometer piece. This is an artillery watch based on the house of U Montandon of St. Croix. That's Ulysse Montandon of St. Croix. This was around 1885, and this piece was designed by actually Ulysses' brother Emile, who was a lieutenant colonel in the artillery, the Swiss artillery. But utilizing this, we do see this now. The bow is the traditional circular version. However, the crown itself, we have this onion now. Certainly, we are going to be experiencing much more sophisticated changes in the 1890s. And we'll look at this piece, which is dated 1894 and signed Montandon Geneva. So actually Montandon Genève. And this piece is the bow, you will notice the bow is much more oval. And the crown itself has evolved so that it is almost a barrel-shaped pumpkin, but this is very indicative of these early 1890s, and it will continue to evolve. And indeed, the pendant we will see in the mid 1890s up until the end of the century. We will see this. Basically, the crown continues to have this sort of barrel pumpkin shape, but the pendant is much more elegant, and it is almost branching out with these wings that go into the bow itself. So this is a stylistic that we are seeing evolve. And certainly by the first decade of the 20th century, we have this U Montandon Robert Geneva signed piece. We see that this actually the crown is now becoming much more flattened and much more button-like, and it is sitting on this stylistic of pendant. So this is an early 20th century watch. We can see this, and it evolved slightly from the 1890s, but still it is more or less keeping some of the general characteristics. However, it is continuing to evolve. Now, we enter this World War I period, where we are starting to see these watches become so-called trench watches or wrist watches. And now we have several examples from Alphonse Montandon Bandelier. These are generally ladies' This is circa 1909 to 1920, so 1910, 1920. And we do see how flattened the crown has become. These definitely this very slim winding buttons, which this is already very similar to what modern watches have become, wristwatches. But the evolution continues and is in this later period between 1925 and 1932, we have evolved, and these are already wristwatches. However, the crown is almost a disc at this point, but we see these Art Deco, this jewel or gemstone ornamentation on the crown itself. And this is very characteristic of this Art Deco style. But we do see how this has evolved, and obviously there is no bow on these watches at this point by the 1920s. These are already firmly on a wristwatch. These are no longer pocket watches. There's no longer the need to suspend them from the neck if it would be a pendant watch for a lady or on a chain for a man's pocket watch. So we have been able to trace the evolution of the crown, pendant, and bow architecture from the last quarter of the 18th century up until the modern era, the early watches of the 20s and 30s. We see what sort of changes have taken place, but yet I do hope that this overall assessment of this crown and pendant evolution is of help in determining the approximate age of a pocket watch when very little information is available. Now, obviously, if one has biological, genealographical, or genealogical information that helps line up a particular watchmaker with a particular watch signed by the artisan, then we have extra information. It helps us hone in on a much more definitive dating. Yet some of these styles can be slippery. For example, this ball-shaped pendant and crown with architecture with the bow as a circle. This is a theme that we will see dominating the 19th century, and indeed the earlier forms are imitated. For example, the first examples from the 18th century, we will see more modern versions sort of reintroduced in the late 19th century. This is an appeal to classical styles, and so this would be an imitation. So in this case, one has to realize by the actual movement architecture, the technical specifications within a watch, that we're clearly dealing with a later watch, but yet the style comes back as a classic. So I hope this discussion of this evolution of these watch architecture in the crown, the pendant, the bow is helpful in your own quest to determine how old a pocket watch is. And if this is providing you any food for thought, I'm very pleased, but I would like to receive any feedback, questions, comments about this discussion. And this was my concern today. I thank you for your attention, and I wish you a nice weekend. Bye-bye.